Welcome back to Terrified Tales, where the rain falls slow and the fear creeps in quicker. Like and subscribe before we begin, and tell us where and when you're listening. Midnight, alone, that's when they find you. The fog over Dower Lake was thick as wool, hanging in the trees like it had weight, like it remembered something. Dr. Mara Ellin paused on the gravel path leading to the research cabin, holding a cardboard box of archival equipment against her hip. The lake lay beyond the tree line, silent and unmoving, though she could feel it, dense and watching. Inside, the cabin smelled of cedar and mothballs. A rustic interior lined with dusty hydrophones, analog receivers, and damp academic journals. She placed the box on the table and began unpacking. Coils of tape, static-choked cassettes, notebooks written in the slanted hand of dead men. Then, she saw it. A reel-to-reel tape sealed in brittle plastic, wrapped with a paper label half torn, the handwriting faint but deliberate. Velvet, service, final no date, no sender, no mention in the catalogue. The plastic crinkled unnaturally under her fingers. As she peeled it open, a faint click echoed from the back room. A heater resetting, she told herself. But it didn't sound mechanical. It sounded rhythmic. She threaded the tape into the old Akai recorder, its spools hungry after years of silence. Her fingers trembled. She pressed play. White hiss. Then, velvet. A voice. Not words exactly, something too soft to define, but a frequency that made her teeth itch. A child's hum, low and almost lullaby-like, hiding under layers of wet, gurgling static. The hum climbed, then fell, then climbed again. Mara stared at the machine, transfixed. Her heart pounded, her ears rang, and then she heard it. Her name, Mara. A whisper, not over the tape, but inside the room, clear and close, like someone standing right behind her. She whirled. No one. Just the pale fog pressing against the window panes, licking condensation across the glass. The machine whined and snapped to a stop. The tape had looped itself. Impossible. She rewound it slowly, forcing logic to dull the spike of her nerves. Outside, something moved along the dock. A soft drip, drip. Drip followed, like someone pulling themselves from the lake, with wet hands. Mara backed toward the door, suddenly aware of how alone she truly was. The nearest ranger station was 2 miles east, and she hadn't told anyone she'd arrived early. She flicked off the lights and peered through the window. The fog had swallowed the lake entirely, but not before she caught a glimpse of it. A girl, standing ankle-deep in the water, wearing a white Sunday dress, head tilted, watching the cabin. Her sister's face, Lacey. But Lacey was dead. Mara clutched the recorder like it could protect her, like science could outpace madness. The hum began again without her touching anything. "Come in, Mara," it whispered. Shotty. Precisely 3:13 a.m., the lake sang. It started as a low harmonic tremor, so faint Mara thought she was dreaming, but it grew. A hum that rippled through the cabin's thin walls, vibrating the glassware in the sink and the veins beneath her. Skin, her breath caught in her throat. It was the same frequency she'd heard on the velvet tape, only now it was alive, swelling in the dark like a presence filling the air. She sat up in bed, ears ringing, and pressed her palms over them. The sound remained, not outside her, but inside. A pressure behind her eyes, a memory pushing through her skull. Then it stopped. The silence that followed was heavier than the noise. She waited, heart thudding, until the only sound was her shallow breathing. But she knew something had woken with her. By dawn, Mara stood on the dock, eyes stung with exhaustion, her field recorder in hand. Fog still hovered above the water like a veil. She hit record. Silence, then a splash, just a fish, then a ripple, of static over the device's headphones, then a voice, very faint, childlike, breathless. "Found you." She yanked off the headphones, nearly throwing the recorder into the lake. A laugh echoed from the trees behind her. She spun. "Ivy?" a man's voice called. A tall, broad-shouldered figure emerged through the fog with cautious steps. Theo Driscoll, the lake warden. His beard was unkempt, his ranger jacket unzipped over a plaid shirt. In one hand, he held a half-eaten apple. In the other, a walkie-talkie hissing with static. "You're up early," he said. "Or never slept?" Mara tried to look composed. "Recording ambient sound. I think something's happening underwater." Theo frowned. "They always say that right before it starts." "Before what starts?" He walked to the edge of the dock and stared into the water like it owed him something. "The morning hour. Locals say the lake sings every 7 years. Always starts the same. Soft hum at night. Animals go quiet. Static on the radios." Mara stared at him. "That's a myth," she said, though her voice lacked conviction. "I saw my brother walking on this dock once, 2 years after he drowned. Saw him plain as day, same clothes he was buried in." Theo's voice was steady, not theatrical. "I don't need the myth to believe the water listens," Mara almost replied, but a small voice cut through the silence. "Is she the one who hears it?" They both turned. Ivy, Theo's niece, pale and wide-eyed, stood barefoot in the grass behind them. Her hands clutched a stuffed rabbit with one ear, torn off. "What did you say?" Theo asked gently. Ivy didn't look at him. She looked at Mara. "You were humming in your sleep," Ivy said. "But it wasn't your voice." Mara knelt slowly. "How do you know?" "I recorded it." From her little pocket, Ivy pulled out a pink Fisher-Price tape recorder, the kind from the 90s. She pressed play. A distorted hum filled the air, low, musical, then a soft breath, and then Lacey. Mara went cold. Her skin prickled. "I didn't say anything," Ivy whispered. It was already on the tape. Behind them, a ripple moved across the lake. Not wind, not fish. A single, wide circle. As if something large had surfaced and sunk again. Mara rose, eyes on the water. The air smelled faintly of lilies and rot. The lake floor came into focus like a memory through dirty glass. Blurry, reluctant, and wrong in all the ways Mara wasn't ready to name. She leaned over the monitor inside the sonar tent, breath fogging the screen. Static had corrupted the early scans, but now, after manually adjusting the frequency bands, the acoustic imagery of the submerged town was sharpening. Geometry emerged, foundations, corners, angles not found in nature. "Jesus," she whispered. There. It was, half buried in silt and darkness. The steeple. It jutted up from the lake bed like a broken tooth, still intact despite 50 years underwater. The sonar revealed a gash near its base, an open doorway jagged like it had been torn outward, not caved in. Theo hovered behind her, arms crossed, his face unreadable. "That's Chapel's Rest," he said. "Town they drowned to build." "This place." Mara stared. "They said everything was demolished before the flood, but the records say nothing about a steeple surviving." He nodded grimly. "Because it wasn't supposed to." She turned to him. "You've seen this before?" He hesitated, eyes flickering to the lake outside the tent flap. "I dove once, as a teen. Dared myself to find it. Saw pews floating, upside down like dead things. Heard songs, not like hymns, something older. Hung in the water like cobwebs. Haven't been down there since." On the monitor, the steeple glitched. The image flickered, once, then again. Then a pulse spread. Across the sonar grid, Concentric circles, as if the steeple was breathing, the equipment whined. A short shriek of static screamed through the headphones. The tape deck clicked behind them. No one had pressed play. The reel, labeled Velvet Service Final, began to unwind slowly, dragging its magnetic tongue across the heads. The sound it released was degraded, warped from moisture and time. But then clarity, a male voice, stentorian, echoed like speaking in a cathedral. We are cleansed in water, but born through the ear. Let the sound fill your vessel. Theo's expression darkened. That's Pastor Morven, he muttered. He's been dead since 74. How do you... My grandfather had the tapes, Theo said. Burned them. Said the voice kept changing. Said it started saying his name. The reel hissed violently and stopped. Mara rewound it. Hit play again. Different message. Same voice, but now distorted with static and breathing. The doors will open when you stop asking what you are. She stepped back, every hair on her arm standing. This is impossible, she said. Theo's voice was flat. That's what everyone says at first. He grabbed his jacket and stepped outside, the tent flap rustling behind him. Mara stood frozen, staring at the sonar display. On the monitor, the steeple pulsed once more. But this time, it was a heartbeat. And, from the headphones, barely audible beneath the recording, she heard something that shattered her breath into fragments, a girl's voice. Don't let it sink again. The reel-to-reel recorder was off, and yet Mara could still hear it playing. She sat at the cabin's desk, the velvet tape threaded loosely across the spools, unmoving, the power light unlit. Her headphones lay limp around her neck, but from them sound trickled like an open wound, faint, wet, irregular. Her name spoken not with fear or affection, but recognition. Mara. She turned the power switch on, then off again. No change. She unplugged the machine. The whisper persisted, low and garbled, like someone trapped inside it, struggling through layers of time and magnetic decay. I'm not hearing this, she said aloud. It's auditory residue, nothing more. My brain's cross-firing memories with artificial signals. But the tape was not playing a memory. It was playing her. She pressed record on her laptop, microphone hot, then pressed play on the tape deck. Again, just to disprove what she already knew. The hiss returned. A silence. Then, Mara, did you close the door? She jerked back, her own voice. Unequivocally, her tone, cadence, inflection. But she had never said those words into any microphone. Her laptop stopped recording with a dull click. She checked the file. Yes, there it was. The voice. Her voice. Unnerved, she checked her call logs. Her emails. She even inspected the cabin for a hidden mic, rationality scraping desperately against the walls of her skull. Outside, the wind scraped across the lake like a fingernail dragging down glass. The trees swayed, brittle with frost, and far off, the soft clang of a buoy echoed, a lonely, hollow bell. 1, 2, 3. She turned to the corner shelf where she'd stacked the archival boxes from Helena, reached for a folder labeled 1975 or 76, final months. Inside, a faded transcript. Sermon notes, typed and corrected by hand. They gather where the echoes sleep, beneath the veil, in the hush. Their names were sung, not spoken. The lake does not forget the sound of sin. She skimmed. Further, scribbled in red pen in the margin, do not play back what the water offers. A soft knock at the cabin door, 3 precise taps. She froze. No footsteps had approached. No crunch of leaves, just knock, knock, knock. She opened it slowly. No one. Only fog. Only the lake. Only the growing sense that sound had detached itself from source, that voices were no longer loyal to the mouth that made them. As she turned back inside, the reel-to-reel spun again of its own volition. The voice was hers once more, but different this time, unfamiliar, older. He opened the door. I told him not to. I told him the audio cut off abruptly, no end. Just silence. And Mara realized with a cold, crawling certainty that the message hadn't ended. It had paused, waiting for her to finish the sentence. Mara hadn't meant to fall asleep at the desk. The daylight was pale when she woke, grey and sour, like milk turned just past the threshold. The velvet tape had unwound itself completely, the loose reel dangling off the edge of the table like a ribbon soaked in breath. She barely remembered crawling into bed. Her head throbbed behind the eyes, and her dreams, what she could recall, were all of doors opening underwater, someone waiting behind them. She stood slowly, joints stiff, and noticed something odd at the cabin's back door. A trail. Not footprints exactly, but impressions, dark, wet outlines, stamping a path across the pine floor. From the dock, through the cabin, to her bed. She didn't scream, she didn't move, she simply followed them back outside barefoot, heart in her mouth. The dock was damp, but empty. The lake looked the same, still, wide and shrouded in gauze-like mist. Yet the water smelled different this morning. Not algae or decay, but perfume. The kind her mother used to wear on Sundays. Lilac and dust. A voice startled her. Dr. Mara? It was Ivy, standing at the edge of the woods, clutching a thick piece of paper. Her stuffed rabbit dragged behind her, one eye missing. You came early, Mara said. Her voice cracked. I had to, Ivy said simply. He told me to give you this. Mara blinked. Who told you? The man with the stitched mouth, Ivy said. She handed over the drawing. Mara's breath caught. It was the church. Drowned, yes, but open. Ivy had drawn it rising from the lake, surrounded by broken graves and crooked pews floating on the water like leaves. The steeple had no cross, just an eye, crudely scrawled in charcoal, bleeding lines in every direction. Where did you see this? Mara whispered. Last night, Ivy said. He was playing a song with no sound, but I heard it anyway. He told me to draw the place where the voice sleeps. Mara knelt, voice trembling. Did you hear a name? Did you hear Lacey? Ivy shook her head slowly. No, but the girl with wet hair asked for you. She said you left the door open. Mara staggered back, the weight of the paper in her hand suddenly unbearable. Theo appeared moments later, rushing down the path with a small walkie clipped to his belt, a look of panic under his sun-scorched face. Ivy, he snapped, grabbing her shoulder. Jesus, don't wander off like that. She was giving me something, Mara said, handing him the drawing. Theo's face paled instantly. You've seen this before? Mara said. He folded the paper quickly, as if trying to hide it from the world. I saw it when I was 15, he muttered. On a VHS, a diver went down near the old steeple. When he came up, he drew that exact image and tore out his own eardrums before sunset. Mara stared at him. What happened to him? Died. In his sleep, Theo whispered. No wounds, just bled out from the nose and ears. They said his brain hummed itself apart. A long silence passed between them. Then Ivy whispered something Mara barely caught. She's waiting for you beneath the bell. The walkie on Theo's belt hissed. A whisper. Mara didn't recognize the words, but she recognized the voice. Her Un. The dream began with the color black. Not the absence of light, but the soft, endless black of water after a scream. Then a low note, one that wasn't heard but felt, vibrating down the spine like grief remembered too late. Mara stood ankle-deep inside what looked like a drowned church, though no water touched her. The pews had warped, their wooden arms twisted. like limbs in rigor. Water stains climbed the walls in tidal arcs, as if the building had inhaled the lake 1,000 times and exhaled none of it. At the far end, beneath a crumbling altar, sat Lacey, 10 years old again, wearing her favorite yellow, sundress soaked to the hem, dripping, smiling. Mara tried to speak, but her throat was full of silt. No sound emerged. She stepped forward, each footfall releasing small ripples across the waterlogged floor. They made no sound, only movement. The steeple above groaned. A voice emerged, not Lacey's, not Mara's, but something masculine, booming, ancient and distorted, by tape warble. "We gather not to remember, but to surrender." It came from nowhere and everywhere, bleeding down from the ceiling like radio static. And Mara realized with a wave of terror that the voice was inside the dream. Not metaphor, not metaphorical, but literally a recording somehow threading itself into her unconscious. Her head throbbed. The pressure behind her eyes surged. Lacey stood. Her lips moved, but her voice came several seconds late, off sync like a bad dub. "You didn't mean to leave me, but you did." Mara collapsed to her knees. "I tried," she choked out. "You weren't listening," Lacey said. The altar behind her split down the center. Water gushed from the crack, black and warm. Something moved beneath the surface, long, slow, patient. Then another voice joined the chorus, Mara's own, layered and decaying. "Close the door, before it learns your shape." Suddenly all the pews turned toward her, not the people, the objects. Their backs twisted to face her, warped heads forming atop the wood. Eyes opened in the knots. Mouths gaped where cushions once lay. A bell tolled. But there was no bell in the church. It rang from beneath her. The floor gave way, softening into liquid, and she sank screaming into the dark, and woke, gasping, coughing, choking, on lake water. She flailed out of bed, water pouring from her mouth in thick gurgles. Her lungs burned as though she had truly been submerged. Her pajamas clung to her like wet bandages. The sheets were soaked. The clock read 3:13 a.m. A scraping sound came from the kitchen. She staggered out, still spitting up water. On the table sat the velvet tape. It had moved. No one had touched it. The reels slowly began turning, not playing. "Recording." Mara's voice emerged, only it was saying what she had just dreamed, word for word. "Close the door, before it learns your shape." And then the tape hissed, paused. "Mara, you didn't dream it." By morning, the air outside the cabin felt heavy enough to drown in. The fog had thickened again, this time not blanketing the lake, but curling around it, like something circling prey. The trees along the shore leaned inward ever so slightly, as if listening. Mara stood on the dock, her skin still damp from the nightmare, holding her breath for no reason she could explain. She didn't tell Theo about the dream. Not at first. He arrived just after sunrise with 2 thermoses of bitter, coffee, and a manila folder under one arm. His eyes were bloodshot, the collar of his flannel shirt wrinkled as though he hadn't undressed at all. They sat on the edge of the dock, legs dangling over the side, boots just shy of the water. "You look like hell," he said gently, handing her the coffee. "Better than I feel," Mara replied. "You ever dream like you're underwater, but you're not afraid?" Theo flinched slightly. "That's how it starts." She turned to him. "The tape recorded my dream last night," she said. "Verbatim." He nodded slowly, as if he'd been expecting it. "I wasn't going to say anything yet," he muttered, "but now I think you need to know." He slid the manila folder into her lap. Inside were several photographs, grainy black and white shots of the lake, dated August 1989. One showed a small motorboat floating near the center. Another showed 2 teen boys standing at the dock, both Smiling, one of them clearly Theo, thinner, brighter, alive in a way she hadn't seen in him before. "That was me and Caleb," he said. "My best friend. He bet me $10 I couldn't swim to the center and touch the old buoy." Mara looked up. "There's no buoy now." "Nope," he said. "It disappeared after that day." He pointed to the third photo. It showed ripples in the lake, concentric, perfect, like sonar rings, but there was no visible impact source. He went under halfway there, just vanished. No splash, no scream, just gone. Mara closed the folder. They searched for weeks. Found nothing. Not even a shirt. But here's the part I never told anyone. Not the police. Not even my dad. He reached into his pocket and took out an old cassette tape. It was labeled in smudged pencil, C Echo 1. "I had a recorder with me," he said. "It was in my bag on the dock. When I played the tape later, I expected wind, water sounds, maybe me calling his name, but that's not what was on it." He placed it in the cabin's tape deck and pressed play. The hiss of old tape filled the room. Then a voice. Not Caleb's. "If you don't answer, I'll become you." Then silence. Then static. Then Theo's own voice, much younger, panicked. "Caleb, stop it. That's not funny. Say something. Caleb, stop." And then the same voice again. "This time it's your turn to sink." Theo pressed stop. I burned the original right after. But the sound, my voice, kept coming back in other recordings. My dad's fishing radio, my niece's toy keyboard, once, even the wind. Mara's hands were trembling. "You think the lake copies us?" she asked. "Like it remembers who we were and waits for the gaps to open?" Theo didn't answer right away. Then, almost under his breath, "I think the lake wants voices. And I think it's tired of listening." Gust of wind scraped across the lake's surface. The same note she'd heard in her dream hummed faintly across the dock, a resonance just beneath conscious sound. Mara turned to look out over the water. There, in the center, a ripple spread outward. No boat, no breeze, just a single perfect circle. Waiting. Bye. Morning. The air outside the cabin felt heavy enough to drown in. The fog had thickened again, this time not blanketing the lake but curling around it, like something circling prey. The trees along the shore leaned inward ever so slightly as, if listening. Mara stood on the dock, her skin still damp from the nightmare, holding her breath for no reason she could explain. She didn't tell Theo about the dream, not at first. He arrived just after sunrise with 2 thermoses of bitter coffee and a manila folder under one arm. His eyes were bloodshot, the collar of his flannel shirt wrinkled as though he hadn't undressed at all. They sat on the edge of the dock, legs dangling over the side, boots just shy of the water. "You look like hell," he said gently, handing her the coffee. "Better than I feel," Mara replied. "You ever dream like you're underwater, but you're not afraid?" Theo flinched slightly. "That's how it starts." She turned to him. "The tape recorded my dream last night," she said. "Verbatim." He nodded slowly, as if he'd been expecting it. "I wasn't going to say anything yet," he muttered, "but now I think you need to know." He slid the manila folder into her lap. Inside were several photographs, grainy black and white shots of the lake, dated August 1989. One showed a small motorboat floating near the center. Another showed 2 teen boys standing at the dock, both smiling, one of them clearly Theo, thinner, brighter, alive in a way she hadn't seen in him before. "That was me and Caleb," he said. "My best friend. He bet me $10 I couldn't swim to the center and touch the old buoy." Mara looked up. "There's no buoy now." "Nope," he said. "It disappeared after that day." He pointed to the third photo. It showed ripples in the lake, concentric, perfect, like sonar rings, but there was no visible impact source. He went under halfway there, just vanished. No splash, no scream, just Gone. Mara closed the folder. They searched for weeks. Found nothing. Not even a shirt. But here's the part I never told anyone. Not the police. Not even my dad. He reached into his pocket and took out an old cassette tape. It was labeled in smudged pencil, C Echo 1. I had a recorder with me, he said. It was in my bag on the dock. When I played the tape later, I expected wind, water sounds, maybe me calling his name, but that's not what was on it. He placed it in the cabin's tape deck and pressed play. The hiss of old tape filled the room. Then a voice. Not Caleb's. If you don't answer, I'll become you. Then silence. Then static. Then Theo's own voice, much younger, panicked. Caleb, stop it. That's not funny. Say something. Caleb, stop. And then the same voice again. This time it's your turn to sink. Theo pressed stop. I burned the original right after. But the sound, my voice, kept coming back in other recordings. My dad's fishing radio, my niece's toy keyboard, once, even the wind. Mara's hands were trembling. You think the lake copies us? She asked. Like it remembers who we were and waits for the gaps to open? Theo didn't answer right away, then almost under his breath. I think the lake wants voices, and I think it's tired of listening. A gust of wind scraped across the lake's surface. The same note she'd heard in her dream hummed faintly across the dock, a resonance just beneath conscious sound. Mara turned to look out over the water. There, in the center, a ripple spread outward. No boat, no breeze, just a single perfect circle, waiting. The lake refused to stay quiet. It wasn't just the wind anymore. It was something lower, more deliberate, like the bass line of a hymn hummed through rotting wood. That morning, Mara and Theo stood side by side on the rusted floating dock, tension between them sharp as fishhook wire. The steeple was directly beneath them. Mara clutched a clipboard, trying to still her nerves. Theo checked his oxygen tank with practiced hands, but the shake in his jaw betrayed something he wasn't saying. The sky above was choked in slate-grey cloud cover, and the lake surface had turned the color of ash. You sure you want to do this? Mara asked. You said yourself you haven't gone down in years. I'd rather go under than leave you guessing, Theo muttered. Besides, whatever's in that church, it's breathing. You saw it on sonar. I need to know. He secured the mask, gave a quick nod, and slipped into the water with a clean, quiet splash. Mara watched the dark ripples spread outward. Then silence. The only sound was the occasional radio click and the soft buzz of insects somewhere in the trees. She sat down by the comms case, adjusted the static-drenched headset, and tuned in to Theo's line. Nothing at first. Then, visibility's low, less than a foot past the surface. She heard his breathing, rhythmic, tight. Going down, 15 feet, 20. Mara squinted over the lake. The fog was thinning now, burning away in strange vertical lines, as if a grid had been laid across the sky. Structure in sight. A moment later. There's something on the steeple. Mara gripped the headset. What do you mean? It's not algae. It's cloth. White cloth. Hanging from the steeple like a veil. The comms crackled, then a noise emerged beneath his voice, low and harmonic, like a throat singing from within a tunnel. It wasn't feedback, it was intentional. I think it's... Wait, no, something's moving inside. The transmission hissed violently. Then silence. Mara bolted upright. Theo, come in, say again, only breathing now. Then, very clearly, open your eyes, Mara. Her name. But not Theo's voice. It was hers. Over his comm line. Then something. Worse, laughter. A child's laugh, wet and broken, looping like a skipping record. Mara clutched the receiver tighter, pulse spiking. Theo, get out of there, now! Nothing. Then bubbles, a roar of static. Then a scream. Not from pain, but from too much sound. The sound of everything at once. Church bells, glass shattering. A congregation moaning, water boiling, screeching wood. Theo's voice broke through. Pull me up. It touched my face, Mara. Something's inside my suit. She ran to the edge of the dock and grabbed the cable, helping. To crank him upward, the water churned unnaturally, pulling downward as if reluctant to release him. He broke the surface with a howl, mask torn, eyes bloodshot and wide. He clawed his way onto the platform, shivering, vomiting lake water onto the boards. Mara knelt beside him. Theo, breathe. Talk to me. What happened down there? He turned to her slowly. His lips moved, but the voice that came out was hers. The door is open now. You heard me say it. He collapsed, unconscious. His mouth twitched. Water leaked from his ear and etched into the condensation on his oxygen tank, scrawled in perfect cursive. Velvet. Entry. First. Theo hadn't moved in over an hour. He lay curled on the cabin cot, a cold compress draped over his forehead. The damp fabric now stained with a faint yellow-grey tinge, lake water leaching from his pores. His eyes fluttered behind closed lids. His breath came in irregular bursts, as though some inner rhythm had replaced his lungs with metronomes. Mara sat beside him, a recorder in one hand and a flashlight in the other, her own thoughts scattered and brittle. The emergency calls to Helena had gone unanswered. The nearest hospital was 40 minutes away by boat and dirt road, but something in her refused to leave this place. She couldn't shake the feeling that if she left Theo behind now, something else would answer the door in his place. The tape. She turned back to the reel-to-reel machine. The velvet and service, final reel, had stayed silent all day. No unexplained spinning, no backward messages, no activation. But now at twilight, as the fog began to creep once more along the lake's hemline, it began to tick, just a single metallic click, and then, it began to rewind itself. Mara stood slowly. She hadn't touched it. No timer was set. No power surge. The machine simply decided to act. The reels spun backward fast, jerking and sputtering, tape flashing like a serpent's tongue in the dim light. Then it stopped and played. Not a hymn, not whispers. This time, a reconstruction, a perfect replication of the moment from the dock just hours ago. Theo, get out of there now, her own voice. Perfect pitch, no distortion, no tape hiss. Then, her voice again. It touched me, it touched my face, Mara. It wasn't a recording, it was a reenactment. The tape was mimicking her voice from that day's events she hadn't recorded. Mara backed away from the machine. Theo groaned. She turned to him. His lips moved, no voice, just the subtle motion of articulation. She leaned closer. He was mouthing something over and over again. Play it, he whispered hoarsely. It's not finished until you play it. Then his body seized. He sat bolt upright and screamed, not in terror but in two voices at once. One was his, the other was Pastor Morven's from the 1976 sermons. A slow chant emerged from his throat. She was born without baptism. She dreams beneath the bell. Her ears are open. Now she may speak. Then he collapsed again. Blood dripped from one nostril. Mara turned back to the tape. The machine emitted a new sound now, a dial tone, impossibly analog, echoing from its speakers, like a forgotten rotary phone trapped underwater. Then it clicked once, a soft voice, childlike, curious, impossibly close. Are you ready to listen now? Mara's knees buckled. She caught the desk edge before falling. From the corner of the room, the microcassette player, the one she had thrown, clicked on without a tape inside. It played the same voice. Come to the steeple. I'll show you how the sound was made. The flashlight flickered. Theo whispered from the cot. She's inside the lake now, but the sound lets her out. Then the velvet tape stopped spinning. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was waiting. The knock came just after dusk. 3 taps, then a pause, then 2 more. Mara had just finished cleaning the blood from Theo's face, gently dabbing his cheek as he drifted in and out of some fitful half-sleep. She froze as the knocks echoed again, soft, but too precise to be wind or accident. She reached for the cabin door slowly, hand trembling on the knob. On the other side stood Dr. Helena Yurev. Her red coat was soaked through, droplets clinging to her glasses, her black hair plastered to her face. But her expression wasn't one of fear or urgency. It was awe, wide-eyed and manic, like someone who had seen the shape of God and come away grinning. "Helena," Mara said, "what are you?" "I drove straight from Montreal," Helena said. The sound started bleeding through the archive wall. "Didn't you get my messages?" "You sent recordings, not answers." Helena walked past her into the cabin, eyes immediately drawn to the reel-to-reel machine and the makeshift workstation Mara had built beside it. She touched nothing, but her fingers hovered over the velvet reel with reverence, like it was a holy artifact. "It's happening," she whispered. "It's real. The church acoustics weren't just residual imprints, they're resonant zones. They're alive." Mara shut the door behind her, uncertain whether to feel relief or dread. "Theo nearly drowned this morning," she said. "Something touched him. It spoke through him." Helena nodded, already expecting this. "They can mimic us," she said. "Every recording made in Chapel's Rest carries a soul print, a psychophonic echo of the person who spoke. The tapes we've been playing are like keys. But it's not just about listening." She turned to face Mara, and for the first time, there was real fear in her eyes. "It's about being heard back." Helena reached into her bag and pulled out a small analog transmitter, custom-built, cobbled together with wax-sealed wiring, and a rusted tuning fork welded to its side. "This," she said, "is tuned to the frequency of the lake's hum. I've been listening to it on the drive." Mara narrowed her eyes. "And?" Helena turned it on. The speaker emitted a low, guttural resonance. Not quite a sound, more like a pressure. Then, a voice, not from the speaker, from inside the room. She opens with sound and closes with silence. Theo gasped from the cot. Helena rushed to him. "He's marked," she said. "The lake's chosen him as a conductor. But that won't last. They always burn through the first voice." "What does it want?" Mara demanded. Helena hesitated. "A listener who won't resist. Someone with a fractured auditory memory. Someone who already doubts their senses." Mara's stomach turned. "You think it's me? I think it's always been you." Outside, the wind picked up, howling like a bowed cello string. The trees groaned against the weight of it. Then, a knock. Same pattern. 3. Pause. 2. Helena and Mara locked eyes. "That wasn't me," Helena whispered. The door rattled. Then, the tape began to unspool by itself, dragging across the floorboards, slithering toward the door like magnetic. Thread pulled by invisible fingers. Theo whispered from the cot, not to anyone in the room, but to someone neither of them could see. "She's coming through the bell now." The stuffed rabbit was in the middle of the dock, one eye missing. The ear sewn back on, with black thread that hadn't been there before. Mara spotted it just after sunrise. Mist drifted over the lake like thinning gauze, giving everything a dreamlike blur, but the rabbit was sharp in her vision, deliberate, placed, waiting. "Ivy," she called out instinctively, scanning the tree line. "Theo's awake. You can come out." But no voice returned. Only the wind across the water, unusually warm, like breath held just inches from her skin. Helena stepped up beside her, frowning. "What is that doing out there?" Ivy must have left it, Mara said, though she was no longer sure. She was here 2 days ago. Helena turned to her. You told me Theo was watching her. He was, Mara replied. I thought... She trailed off. The fog shifted. Mara's phone buzzed inside her coat pocket. New voicemail from an unknown number. She put it on speaker. I drew her just like you said, Ivy's small voice whispered. Now she's real again. Then a splash. Distant, muffled, then silence. Mara bolted. She ran down the dock, heart pounding, snatching the rabbit with one hand and scanning the shoreline. Ivy, she screamed. Ivy! No answer. She fell to her knees at the edge of the dock, peering into the still water below. Something drifted just beneath the surface. Pale. She reached instinctively, then stopped cold. It wasn't Ivy. It was her own reflection, but wrong. It blinked when she didn't. Its eyes were wide and unblinking, lips parted as if it were mouthing words underwater, and beneath that reflection, another face, smaller. A girl, eyes open, smiling, drifting downward. Lacey, she breathed. Helena grabbed her shoulder, yanking her back. You can't follow her, it's bait, that's not your sister. Ivy saw her. Mara gasped. She must have followed the voice. Back at the cabin, Theo was sitting up, wrapped in a blanket, fingers trembling. She's beneath the dock, he murmured. Said it was quiet there. She said the song was softer under the wood. He pointed toward the lake. I think she climbed in, he said, smiling the whole time. Helena was pacing now. We need to search. I'll call for help. If we move quickly... No, Theo said suddenly. His eyes locked on Mara. There's something else. She said your sister told her how to breathe without lungs. The room fell into silence. Mara felt the world shift, like the lake bed tilting beneath her. Helena turned slowly. What did she mean? But Mara already knew. The velvet tape clicked on by itself. The reels turned. This time slowly, like a child. Winding up a toy, from the speaker came a whisper. Not Ivy, not Lacey, Mara, a small voice, gurgled, delighted. It's just us girls now. From outside, the faintest laugh echoed across the water. Then a ripple. A footprint appeared on the dock. Just one, small, wet, facing the cabin. Helena insisted they lower the hydrophone immediately. Ivy's not gone, she said, voice sharp. Breath visible in the cold air. Not fully, not if the signal's still active. If she was taken in, we'll hear her. Mara stared at her, dead-eyed. You think the lake's streaming her soul, that she's echoing now? I think she's been absorbed, Helena said carefully, but not yet erased. They stood on the dock, the fog cleared to a pale veil, the water flat as a mirror. Below, the town of Chapel's Rest waited in its cathedral of silt and memory. Theo sat at the edge, silent and hunched, clutching Ivy's stuffed rabbit. He hadn't spoken since the footprint. He just rocked gently, eyes fixed on the surface, Mara. Unfolded the hydrophone line, coated wire, cold steel microphone, and let it slip into the water inch by inch. The cable coiled out like a silver umbilical cord, disappearing into shadow. At exactly 9:44 a.m., Helena flipped the switch on the analog receiver and slowly turned the dial. The speaker gave a soft hiss. Then, a note. Not a sound, not quite. Low resonant frequency, like the breath of something ancient and immense, not mechanical, not geological, organic. Then another. Then voices, a choir. Low at first, murmuring syllables in some drowned, rotting language. Male and female, adult and child. No harmony, no melody, just a shared rhythm, like they were following a conductor that couldn't be seen. The sound layered, deepened, grew, and beneath it, laughter. Mara's knees buckled. It was Lacey, laughing, unmistakable. 10. years old. Her giggle curled through the frequencies like a thread through cloth, winding around each voice until they all began laughing with her. The choir shifted. They were singing now, but not in any language known to Mara. The words sounded like reversed tape, like bones grinding against piano wire. The voices surrounded her. She pressed the headphones tighter to her ears, blood rushing. Helena was weeping silently. Then a new voice emerged from the center of the mix, Mara's own voice. She said I could stay if I sang, but I don't know the words yet. Mara's stomach dropped. It wasn't a memory. It was happening now. The choir paused as if holding its breath. Then, from the hydrophone feed, a single clear sentence whispered, by a child's voice, "It's your verse now." The cable snapped tight. The dock jolted. Theo dropped the rabbit. Helena screamed. The hydrophone line began to coil backward, jerking toward the lake as if something was pulling from below. The receiver sparked. The water rippled outward, forming a perfect spiral, and in the center, for just a moment, a face broke the surface. Ivy, but not Ivy. Her eyes were completely black, mouth opened in a wide, soundless scream. Then she sank, gone. The high choir resumed, but now they were singing Mara's name in perfect, dreadful unison. The sound stayed with her after the machine stopped. Even hours later, long after Helena had shut the receiver off and wrapped it in copper mesh, long after Theo had retreated wordlessly into the woods, Mara could still hear them, the choir, Lacey's laugh. Her own voice repeating things she had not yet said. It wasn't just in her ears anymore. It was under her skin. She sat alone in the cabin's tiny bathroom now, floor tiles cold against her spine, the bulb above flickering like it was being slowly squeezed. She peeled back the sleeve of her sweater to scratch at her arm and froze. A strip of something dark had wrapped around her forearm. Thin, shiny, crinkled like snakeskin, magnetic tape, tightly wound. Embedded into her skin like it had grown there overnight. Her breath caught. She tried to pull it off, gently at first, then more forcefully. But as she peeled, it squealed high and unnatural, the sound of fingers dragging along wet cello strings. Blood welled where the tape had sunk in deepest. When the last loop came away, she nearly screamed. Underneath the tape were bruises, round impressions like suction marks, but in the shape of tiny fingerprints, small, child-sized. Her mind reeled. They hadn't been there yesterday. Mara stumbled out into the main room, heart pounding, arm wrapped in gauze. Helena looked up from a stack of scorched microtapes she was trying to clean. "You okay?" Mara didn't answer. She crossed the room and threw the tape on the desk. It still glistened, still warm. Her skin still buzzed from where it had been. "They're touching me now," she said, her voice flat. The choir. Helena's eyes widened. She reached for the tape like it might bite her. "You said they could mimic," Mara continued. "Echo, recreate voices, but you never said they could mark us." Helena's voice was low. "Because I didn't think they could," Ram shook her head. "No, you hoped they couldn't." She pulled out the recorder and hit play. There was a sound like a tape unwinding through water, then a new voice, muffled but unmistakable. "When the tape binds skin, the soul forgets its way back." Helena paled. "I've heard that before," she whispered. "In the Lost Sermon, Pastor Morvan called it reeling in the vessel. Said the child had to carry the thread until her voice returned to its master." She stared at Mara's bandaged arm. "You've been chosen." The cabin door slammed open. Theo stood there, wet from the waist down, wild-eyed. "I saw her," he breathed. "Ivy, in the woods. She was standing between the birch trees, humming. She looked at me, but her eyes were empty, like holes punched in a photo." He held something in his trembling hand. It was a scrap of white cloth, lace-edged, torn from a child's dress. Mara looked down at her own arm. The bruises pulsed as if trying to speak. Still here? Brave. Or maybe you just like the feeling of being watched. Like, subscribe, and drop your time and location in the comments, so we know who's still out there. Now breathe slow. The worst is coming. The storm broke at twilight. It wasn't lightning that started it. It was sound, low at first, like a whisper pressed against the cabin's walls. Then deeper, hollow, like wind passing through a cathedral organ tuned for morning. The windows trembled in their frames. The stove vent howled with breath that didn't belong to any living lungs. Theo was pacing. He hadn't taken his boots off in hours, soaked to the bone, mud drying in streaks along his pants. The scrap of Ivy's dress dangled from one hand and the other kept brushing at his ear as though trying to stop something from crawling inside. "She's not gone," he kept muttering. "They're wearing her. They're using her body like... It's a shell, like a costume. I saw her mouth moving, but it wasn't her." Mara stood by the desk, her fingers curled around the velvet tape box. She hadn't played it in hours, not because she was resisting, but because it was already playing inside her head. "She's under," she said quietly. "Not gone. That's the difference." Theo turned on her, wild-eyed. "You think that makes it better?" he snapped. "You think it matters what kind of death she's inside? They took her, Mara. You played your sister's voice on a haunted goddamn tape, and now they have my niece." Helena tried to calm him. "Theo, you need to..." He shoved the table hard. The hydrophone and tape reels clattered to the floor. "You're still talking like this is research, like this is data. It's not data, it's devilry." Silence hung like smoke after the outburst. Then Mara spoke. Low, hollow. She asked me to follow her. Theo froze. Mara was staring at the window now, out toward the lake. "Last night, in my dream." "No, not a dream. She was in the steeple. The water wasn't wet. She said if I just stepped through the bell tower, it would stop hurting. She said my ears would go quiet forever." Theo's breath caught. "She said that to me, too, when I was a kid, after Caleb drowned." Mara turned slowly, her face pale, lips trembling. "She said you'd come next, that you were almost ready." Theo's hand went to his temple. "I can't stop hearing them," he muttered. "They're inside my bones. The sound isn't sound anymore, it's shape, it's weight." Helena tried to intervene, but it was too late. Theo grabbed the sonar map off the wall and tore it in half. "They're not trapped down there," he shouted. "They're not some sad memory you can study. They're alive. That church is breathing. It sank on purpose, and it wants us to follow." He threw open the cabin door. The wind screamed louder. The velvet tape began to spin on its own again. No power, no hand, just movement. From it came a single phrase, repeated over and over. "Theo Driscoll, the bell remembers you. Theo Driscoll." "The bell remembers you," he staggered backward. "No," he whispered. "No, no, no." Then he turned and ran straight into the trees, down toward the lake. Mara tried to stop him. Theo, don't." But his silhouette vanished into the fog, swallowed by it. A splash echoed seconds later. Then nothing, not even ripples. The lake had taken him back like it had never let him go. Inside the cabin, the tape finally stopped spinning. A soft chime rang from the hydrophone speaker. A bell. One single note, ringing from the lake bed. The fog didn't lift the next morning. It thickened. By noon it had swelled into a wall of opaque grey coiling through, the forest like smoke from a buried fire. Light broke against it in angles, fractured by moisture and movement. Something about it made the trees look shorter, closer, warped. Mara stood on the dock again, alone now. No Theo, no Ivy. Helena hadn't spoken in hours. They'd found his notebook on the shore just after dawn. sodden and salt-streaked, tucked under one of the rotted dock slats. The pages were still intact, though water-blurred and bleeding ink in places. The last few entries were scribbled in a frantic, unsteady hand. Mara sat cross-legged in the cabin, flipping through the final pages. They read like fragments. Saw her again. She's smiling now. The church has no doors anymore, just mouths. The steeple blinks when you name your sins. Her dress keeps changing colors. Then, on the final page, one full illustration, unlike any of the others. The steeple, again. But this time, its pointed spire was crowned not with a cross, but with a single, wide-open eye. Long lashes drawn with childlike care, pupil dilated, staring straight out from the paper. Below it, 3 words. It sees back. Helena studied the drawing over Mara's shoulder. "That's not new," she whispered. It was in the pastor's recovered homily, page 13. He claimed the steeple was the instrument of the divine gaze. Said it didn't house God, but that God housed it. Mara felt a chill in her teeth. "Have you ever heard the steeple ring?" Helena shook her head. "No, but I've heard it breathe." Mara closed the journal, hand trembling. "We have to go to it." Helena looked at her sharply. "No, that's exactly what it wants." "Helena, it's calling my name on everything. The tape, the lake. Even Theo before he... She trailed off. Outside, the hydrophone began clicking on its own again, short pulses like sonar pings. From the speaker, dripping. Then, footsteps. Wet ones, pacing slowly, rhythmically, as if circling a wooden floor. Helena's voice turned hollow. "It's rehearsing." "What?" "The steeple," she said. "It's remembering sound, practicing, like a child humming before a recital. That means it's getting closer, or worse, rising." Mara ran to the dock, scanning the lake. There, just visible through the mist, a crooked shadow breached the surface, not fully. Just the tip. A triangle, wood, stone, a steeple. It swayed with the motion of the lake like it wasn't rooted at all, like it was floating. And above it, impossibly, something shone, a wet glisten. Mara raised her binoculars. The eye was there, not drawn, not imagined, carved deep into the wood and blinking slowly, as though it had just awoken after a long, cold sleep. The water beneath it rippled outward in concentric circles, and then Mara heard it again. A voice not in the air, but inside. Her skull. "Don't look away, that's how it forgets you." She dropped the binoculars. They struck the dock with a metallic crack. She didn't pick them up, because from within the fog, a child's hand broke the surface. Small, white-knuckled, reaching, upward, waving. By nightfall, the lake had gone still again, but the steeple remained. It loomed in the fog like a relic unearthed too early, swaying gently above the waterline. It shouldn't have been buoyant. It shouldn't have floated at all. And yet it rocked there like something cradled, not by nature, but by belief. Mara sat at the cabin table, unmoving, as Helena sorted through the pages of an old manila envelope she'd unearthed from the archive crate she'd refused to open until now. Her fingers moved with detached precision, lips pursed. She looked like she was assembling a map. "What are you looking for?" Mara asked, though her voice came as more of a murmur. Helena didn't answer, not at first. Then slowly she laid one paper flat on the table, a yellowed baptism ledger, 50 names, all from Chapel's Rest, dated 1973 to 1976, the final years before the flood. "Morven kept immaculate records," Helena said. "Names, dates, ages. But I never understood why he drew a line beneath certain names, and why he stamped the others with a single black circle." Mara leaned in. "What does the circle mean?" Helena slid her a photocopy of a passage from a sermon transcript. Those marked with the ear unsealed shall carry the sound of the forgiven. But those unbaptized, whose name remains uncast, will echo eternally until their voice is claimed or silenced. Helena looked up at her. You weren't baptized, were you? Mara froze. What are you talking about? Helena slid her finger down the list of children. Names familiar. Local families. Theo's name circled. Ivy's circled. But no Mara Ellen anywhere on the list. I looked up your records, Helena continued. Cross-referenced them. You were born in Chapel's Rest, but your family moved away after the flood, quickly, quietly. Mara's breath caught. I wasn't supposed to be born yet. My mother said she delivered me early, in Manchester. No, she lied. You were born on the last Sunday before the flood. Helena flipped the page. There was a final entry scrawled at the bottom in ink darker than the rest, as if etched with more pressure. Unbaptized, Ellen Child, female. Name unknown, no date, just one annotation in the margin. Unsealed, marked by silence. May she never speak through the bell. Mara stood abruptly, chair scraping back. I want to see the steeple. You can't, Helena said, almost pleading. That's what it wants. I have to. No, listen to me, Mara, you're a gap, an opening. If you enter that church, you won't just be hearing it anymore. You'll be heard. The radio hissed violently behind them. The hydrophone roared alive. A voice emerged, not Lacey, not Ivy. This one was older, male Morven. She carries the silence of the unspoken. Bring her to the velvet mouth. Let the ritual begin. Helena grabbed Mara's wrist. They'll use your voice to open the last door. But Mara was already pulling free because she understood now. She'd never escaped Chapel's Rest. She had begun in it. And now it was calling back its own unfinished syllable. Outside, the lake surface parted. The church doors, black wood, swollen with age, rose just above the water and swung open. The doors didn't creak. They didn't groan or shudder or moan with age like Mara expected them to. They breathed, as if each slow swing inward released some stored breath that had been held since the day the town sank. The fog curled into the open space like incense drifting into a cathedral. The lake around the exposed steeple had gone perfectly still. She should have been afraid, but what she felt was worse than fear. It was familiarity. She stepped forward, into the mouth of the church, boots sloshing softly in the inch of cold lake water pooled at the entry. The inside was intact, impossibly so. Pews stood in damp silence, warped but unbroken. Stained glass hung in shattered patterns, its images melted into unrecognizable saints. Ivy's voice echoed faintly, though no source could be seen. She said the water isn't cold once you're remembered. Helena called after her from the dock, but the words were muffled, as if they'd lost their meaning the moment they passed through the threshold. And then Mara saw Lacey, sitting on the altar bench, legs dangling, head tilted like a curious bird. The same yellow sundress, same muddy knees, her hair darker than she remembered, soaking wet, eyes wide. Hi, the girl said. Mara felt her mouth go dry. Her pulse thundered in her ears. Lacey, the girl smiled. Is that what you called me? Mara stepped forward. You were... Then you drowned. I was supposed to watch you and... The girl held up a finger. You listened wrong, she said gently. You always did. Mara froze. What do you mean? You called me Lacey, the girl said, swinging her legs. You needed me to be that. Something to forget with. A reason to run away from Chapel's Rest. Mara's voice cracked. I didn't make you up. You didn't have to, the girl whispered. The lake did. She stepped down from the altar and approached. Water sloshed quietly. With every step, her face seemed to shift, mouth softening, eyes changing color, skin paling. Her features became less distinct, less human, more like an impression of someone Mara had once loved and never fully remembered. "You needed someone to blame," the Not Lacey said. "So the lake gave you a sister who drowned, a grief to carry in place of the truth." "What truth?" The girl reached out and took Mara's hand. It was cold and thin and barely solid. "You were the one who fell in, Mara." The world tilted. Mara staggered back. No, I pulled you out. I remember. I ran for help. My mother said." "Your mother buried an empty coffin," the girl said. "She told you what she had to, and the town let you forget. But the bell never did. The bell remembers everything it hears." The walls of the church pulsed around them, wood breathing, hymns leaking from the grain. Mara dropped to her knees. "Remember screaming. You screamed for yourself." The girl knelt too, taking her face in both hands. "But they gave you someone else to scream for, so you wouldn't hear what the lake had already taken." Tears rolled down Mara's cheeks. "If I was the one who drowned, then who have I been mourning all these years?" The girl smiled. "Your own voice." Then she leaned in close and whispered something Mara didn't understand. A sound with no words. A vowel that didn't exist in human speech. And suddenly, the velvet tape began playing back in Mara's mind, not in her ears, but in her bones, and her mouth moved, repeating the sound, echoing it. The girl faded into fog, and Mara was left kneeling before the altar alone. But now, something had changed inside her. She no longer remembered what Lacey looked like, not exactly, and she was terrified to realize she never had. Helena should have left the tape alone. Mara told her that when she returned from the steeple, drenched and silent, clothes clinging like seaweed. She said it the way someone might warn of wet wires or cracked ice, firm but distant, as though the danger were now beyond language. But Helena wouldn't listen. She was already unraveling. Ever since Mara recounted the truth about Lacey, the manufactured grief, the girl shaped by loss rather than memory, Helena had only grown more desperate. She took it not as a horror, but as validation. Proof that the sound had power beyond metaphor, that the velvet frequencies could shape thought, history, even people. That night, Helena worked feverishly. Wires snaked across the cabin floor like veins. Oscilloscopes blinked, the reel-to-reel. Machine lay open on the table, dissected and half alive, humming faintly even when unplugged. Mara sat in the corner, watching like a survivor might watch their own wreckage being catalogued. "I'm going to reverse the frequency," Helena said. "Match the choir's bass line and play it back through analog distortion. It's like peeling paint off a wall. You don't destroy the image, just strip it down to the first layer." "You're not dealing with layers," Mara said softly. "You're dealing with voices that remember being bodies." Helena didn't respond. She clicked the switch. The modified tape began to play backward, not hiss, not music. Breathing, but not human, wet, rattling, cavernous. Like lungs that had adapted to a place with no air. Then a low voice murmured through the speaker. "The girl's voice is the key. Reverse it, and the bell opens inward." The lights flickered. The walls groaned. Mara stood abruptly. "Turn it off." But Helena was transfixed. Her pupils dilated, lips parting as if to mimic the sound. Blood trickled from one nostril. Mara rushed forward to stop the machine, but Helena pushed her back with unnatural force. "I can hear them," Helena whispered. "All of them. The drowned, the unbaptized. They're not lost. They're recorded." Her voice shifted halfway through the sentence, dropped half an octave, slurred, doubled. As if someone else had begun speaking through her, Mara stepped back. "Helena, it's using you. Shut it down." But Helena only laughed, soft, reverent. Then she began to chant, low and slow, the exact phrase from the reversed sermon. "Let the silence peel. Let the sound bleed." The tape began to shudder, not vibrate, shudder, like something inside it was crawling to the surface. The glass on the hydrophone shattered. Helena's body convulsed. She dropped to her knees, back arched violently, mouth open in a silent scream. The same black fluid Mara had seen dripping from the broken microcassette weeks ago now spilled from Helena's ears. Mara screamed her name, but it was too late. Helena's eyes rolled back, and then she spoke. A man's voice, cold, cruel, and deep as the lake bed. "We gave her words. She gave us access." Then silence. Helena collapsed forward, blood pooling beneath her face. Mara knelt beside her, sobbing. But Helena wasn't dead. She was humming. Just one note. Flat, endless. Her vocal cords still vibrating even as her breath stuttered and her pulse slowed. Mara leaned in, pressing her ear close to Helena's lips. The humming changed, turned into a name. Her name. Mara. A second later, the reel snapped in two and burst into flame. No fuel, no spark, just spontaneous combustion. Mara watched in horror as it burned with no smoke, only a sound. A single church bell tolling beneath the flames. 1, 2, 3. The lake was no longer pretending. It wasn't just the way the fog sat still now, unmoving, held in place like drapery before a ceremony. It wasn't the unnatural silence of the woods, or the fact that every compass needle in the cabin now spun, like it was tethered to a heart instead of a pole. It was that something had emerged, fully, physically. The steeple now towered 6 feet above the waterline, and the rest of the church, the roof, the bell, the windows, had risen too, defying laws, both natural and forgotten. Its wood gleamed not with water, but with something worse, an oil-like sheen that rippled with color beneath the surface. Mara stood on the shore, barefoot and shivering, Helena's unconscious body wrapped in a thermal blanket behind her. She no longer needed sonar, no more tape decks or frequencies or reversed reels. She could hear it with her bones now. The lake had grown a mouth, and it was singing. Each note vibrated through the dock planks, rising from the water like a chant from something deep inside the drowned chapel. It was no longer mimicking voices, it was projecting them, sending out calls like sonar pulses, but layered with words, with language. She has heard the bell. She has sung the first verse. Let her enter by silence. Mara stepped closer to the edge. The velvet service. Final tape lay coiled in a bowl of lake water behind her, soaked and motionless, its message already delivered. There would be no more playback. She didn't need playback anymore. Her head pulsed. Her arm, the one once wrapped in magnetic tape, throbbed where the bruises had faded to a dark, ink-black spiral. Her skin itched with memory. A trail of footprints appeared in the silt, leading from the water's edge to the church's now fully visible double doors. Child-sized, fresh. The doors creaked open as if on cue. From within came a sound she hadn't heard since she was 9 years old. Lacey's voice, singing a lullaby. But now she remembered Lacey never sang, not once, because Lacey had never existed. Mara began to walk. Fog parted for her. The footprints continued in front of her as she moved, being laid down in real time as if made by someone just ahead of her, or someone inside her. The closer she drew to the church, the more wrong the structure looked. Its angles twitched. Its windows didn't reflect light. They reflected sound. Every footstep she made, every breath, every heartbeat echoed wrong, as if performed back to her by something that had never learned human time. She reached the threshold, and Then she heard it, her voice, not from memory, not recorded, but live. Mara Ellin, born unsung, baptized in silence, echo of the drowned. You may enter. Inside, the air was thick, syrupy with humidity. The pews had rearranged themselves into a spiral. At the center stood a pillar of tape, human-sized, shivering with tension. Voices hissed and whispered through it, familiar and foreign, all Mara's, none of them hers. She took a step inside, and the church breathed her in. The doors shut silently behind her. The floor pulsed underfoot. Then, from the ceiling, the bell. It swung slowly and tolled, not metal on metal, but her voice, stretched and disfigured, pealing out in all directions. You left the door open, Mara. Now we can speak through you. And beneath that sound, the laughter of Ivy, of Helena, of Theo, and at the center, a new voice, smaller, waiting to be born. The lake had given up its dead. Mara watched from the hilltop, trail as Chapel's Rest emerged in full beneath the dawn. Not ruined, not eroded, but preserved, pristine, as if it had merely been waiting beneath a shuttered lid, unaging and listening for its name. Houses stood upright in the shallows, porches intact, chimneys crumbling with ritual precision. Trees sprouted in the strangest places, inside living rooms, through school desks, entwined in the pews of open-air sanctuaries. Fog laced the streets like cobwebs across an untouched dollhouse. The church was the centerpiece. Its steeple was taller, now reaching not up, but out, as if the structure had adjusted for a new purpose. Its bell tolled without motion, a ceaseless, low hum that couldn't be located with the ears alone. It vibrated inside the skull, like pressure before a storm. Helena lay motionless inside the cabin, breathing shallowly. Her voice was gone. Not silent, not mute, absent. Even her attempts to mouth words made no sound. Her vocal cords had gone dark, like power lines cut underground. And Mara no longer needed to speak. The town called to her without language, made the descent into Chapel's Rest just after sunrise, bare feet treading onto roads that had once been riverbeds. Her eyes no longer stung with fear. She did not question the water receding to allow her passage, nor the way her shadow stretched in two directions, hers and something smaller, a girl's. It walked just behind her, matching her every step. She never turned to see it. Each building she passed was familiar. Shapes that had lived in her nightmares for years now stood sharp and detailed. The diner where her mother had worked, the library with its warped weather vane, the ice cream parlor that had never reopened, and then the schoolhouse. She stopped there, because the swing was still moving, back and forth, slow and steady, empty, no breeze, no reason. And yet it creaked with every arc, emitting the softest note with each sway, each note harmonizing with the bell. The velvet tone. It was a metronome for a ritual that had never finished, and now it would. The townspeople began to appear around her, not alive, not ghosts, echoes. Their skin was lacquered with memory. Their eyes empty sockets filled with recording tape instead of irises, reels slowly turning with each blink. They watched her without recognition, but with purpose. They parted to let her through. She stepped onto the front steps of the church again, but this time the doors did not open. They waited. She reached out with both hands. The left was hers. The right bore the spiral bruise, now glowing faintly, as if inked from within. She pushed. The doors shuddered once, then fell inward like drawn breath. The inside of the church was darker than before, warmer. The pews were gone. In their place was a single circle of water that did not reflect her face. It reflected Lacey, only it wasn't Lacey now. Not fully. The girl stood waist-deep in the black pool, staring up at Mara, with eyes like microphones, pupils rolling like old tape reels. Her voice came not from her mouth, but from the walls themselves. "You returned. The song can end now." Mara took a step forward. The bell sounded again. This time it spoke a single word, a word she hadn't heard in decades. Her birth name. Not Mara, the name her mother whispered once and never again. And the moment it rang out, the church shivered. The sky cracked above Chapel's Rest, like a record needle being dragged backward across time. She stepped into the water barefoot. It was warm, not with heat, but with presence, like something had exhaled just beneath the surface and left its breath suspended for her to wade through. The pool inside the church had no visible bottom. It shimmered black, but not with shadow, with density, as though sound itself had been made liquid. Across from her, the girl waited. Not Lacey. Not quite. Her form had shifted again, like a candle, melting while still lit. Her hair floated weightless around her head. Her arms hung loose at her sides. She was no longer mimicking a memory. She was becoming something new. Around them, the church walls no longer held shape. Pillars bowed inward like ribs. The stained glass windows pulsed faintly, refracting flickers of forgotten faces. Theo, Ivy, Helena, her mother, blurring and dissolving with each toll of the bell, and beneath it all, from some vast place below, came the hymn. A low chant, dissonant, unhuman in its phrasing. Not melody, not rhythm. It was a compulsion disguised as a lullaby. Each note clawed at Mara's spine, begging her to join. She knew what it was now. Not a haunting, not a curse, but a recording in search of completion. A ritual left unfinished the day she was born, the day her name was not spoken into the baptismal water, the day silence entered the bloodline like rot into fruit, and now the sound had circled back. The girl lifted her hand, palm up, and the lake water parted. From beneath, an object rose, slow and reverent. A cassette tape encased in glass. It floated in the air between them, spinning slowly. On the label, written in faded marker, "Velvet Entry." Final voice. Mara took it. The instant her fingers closed around the tape, every voice stopped. The bell froze mid-swing. The hymn ended mid-breath. Silence fell, and then, one by one, the walls of the church began to whisper. They whispered her name, her true name, over and over, thousands of versions of it, cascading through every rafter and beam, the variations of who she might have been if baptized, if drowned, if loved correctly, if remembered properly. She fell to her knees in the water, tape clutched tight in her shaking hands. "Why me?" she whispered. The girl smiled, not with kindness, but with recognition. "Because you were never written down, and things not written are never safe." From behind the altar, the drowned congregation emerged, silent, dripping, their mouths open, but no breath escaped. Instead, their chests vibrated like speakers. Mara stood. She understood what had to happen now. If she played the final tape, the ritual would complete, but something else would be unwritten. She looked back once. Out through the ruined doors of the church, the town still waited, half submerged and listening. Then the girl asked softly, "Will you sing the ending?" and placed in Mara's mouth the first note of the final verse. The tape was shaking in Mara's hand, not from her tremors, from within. A low vibration, pulsing like a trapped heartbeat sealed inside its spools, thumping against the plastic casing with a rhythm that matched no machine, no device, no body. It wanted out. It had waited long enough. The congregation stood motionless in the water around her, men, women, children, not breathing, their heads slightly tilted as if listening to some frequency just beyond her reach. And across from her, at the center of the altar pool, stood the girl. Her form was stable now, no longer shifting. She wasn't Lacey anymore, not even the echo of her. She was Mara, or a version of her that could have been. Same mouth, same eyes, same scar above the left brow, only fresher, deeper, newer. "I don't understand," Mara whispered. "You do," the girl said softly. "You just haven't accepted what you were made to forget." She stepped forward. The water did not ripple around her ankles. We are what echoes when no name is spoken. You escaped the ritual by accident, by silence. That silence called us. We lived in your guilt. Your grief gave us blood. The bell above them shuddered, beginning its slow descent again. Mara looked down at the tape. Its label flickered in the church light, almost as though the word "final" was burning away, letter by letter. "What happens if I play it?" "You forget." Mara blinked. "All of it," the girl continued. "You forget me. The lake, Chapel's Rest, the sound that woke you, everything. You return to the world with silence stitched into your voice. And we stay. Stay where? Here, bound. Echoes unspoken. No more drowning. No more waking in strangers' mouths. We'll rest, but only if the song ends." Mara stepped back. Her mind spun. Helena's eyes filling with blood. Theo reaching for nothing in the fog. Ivy's voice whispering through toys. Her own dreams filled with doors that would not stay shut. "But if I don't play it?" The girl's face darkened. Then the steeple rises. The bell tolls outward, and sound replaces self. You'll know every voice that ever bled into the lake, and they'll know.
"You?"
Behind her, the congregation's mouths opened. Wider, wider, too wide. Mara clenched the tape. "And if I destroy it?" "You can't." The girl nodded toward the tape recorder now rising from the pool, slick, rusted, ancient, but glowing faintly, with something alive. "You've already played it." Mara staggered. "What?" "The moment you took it. That was your voice humming from the bell. You've already entered the ritual. Now you must finish it." The recorder opened with a slow mechanical click. Waiting. Mara stared at it. A life of grief meant something if it was tied to someone, even a lie, even an echo. "I don't want to lose her," she whispered. "You never had her," the girl replied. "But you needed her." Mara looked at her one last time. "I want to remember," she said. "You can't," said the girl, "but you can release us." The bell tolled once more, and Mara slid the tape into the machine. Her fingers hovered over the play button. She took a breath and pressed it. The sound that emerged was not a song. It was her own voice, as a child, humming into a Fisher-Price recorder, in a cabin she no longer remembered. "I never had a sister, but I dreamed one." Then, silence. The steeple groaned. The walls of the church folded inward, as though swallowing sound itself. And Mara forgot her own name. She didn't scream. When it began, there was no time. The moment the tape played, Mara's body stopped being a body. Her thoughts split, not into fragments, but into frequencies. Memories turned to static. Nouns and names dissolved into vibrations. The shape of her life collapsed inward like a ruined cathedral. She fell backward into the water, but she did not sink. The church was gone. So were the pews, the bell, the congregation. In their place was a room made of sound, no walls, just layers, hums, gasps, laughter, prayers, shouts, whispers, all voices she had ever heard, and voices she had never known. They wrapped around her in long, droning chords that resonated not in her ears, but in her bones. She floated in the center of this hollow, a vessel caught between waveforms, watching herself be rewritten. And then the forgetting began. The first to go was her sister's name. Not just the name, the idea of her. Lacey, imagined beside her at the dock. Lacey begging for the deeper water. Lacey sinking, was gone. In her place was a smear of color. Yellow fabric. A laugh without a source. A false grief, unraveling like cassette ribbon in warm hands. The second was her mother's voice. The gentle hum of lullabies. The whispered apology the night they left town. The low shh in the hospital. Brushing hair from her child's forehead. It softened, slowed, then dropped away completely. The note simply ended. Then came the names. Helena, Theo, Ivy. Each syllable flickered, faltered, folded. Not erased. Just never spoken. Not here. Not now. Mara screamed, but no sound came out. Her mouth moved, and air pushed through it, but no breath shaped into language. Instead, the church bell returned, ringing not above her, but within her. Once, twice, thrice. Each chime a lock disengaging. She looked down. Her hands were transparent. Her body had become a waveform. Her thoughts no longer thoughts, but echoes of intentions. And then came the final voice. The one from beneath. The ritual. Older than the town. Older than her name. Not the bell. Not Morven. Not the lake. A sound that predated even meaning. A sound that had only ever wanted to be heard. Now, it whispered, you may rest, but not in memory. In silence. And then the room collapsed. The sound fell into itself like a dying star. A single note remained, high and shrill, just above hearing. Then even that disappeared. Mara opened her eyes. She was standing on the dock. Morning, clear skies, birdsong. No fog, no church, no cabin. Just the sound of leaves moving in the breeze, and a cassette tape in her hand, unlabeled. She didn't know why she had it. She didn't know who she was. Footsteps crunched behind her. A ranger's voice, casual, friendly. You.
All right, miss, she turned. Just
listening, she said, but she couldn't remember to what. In the still water behind her, the steeple was gone. But beneath the surface, far, far below, something watched and listened, waiting for someone else to press play. The sky over Dower Lake was clear for the first time in weeks, crisp autumn blue, crisp enough to forget. A sharp wind moved through the reeds, brushing the water's edge with the softness of memory that hadn't yet hardened into pain. No fog, no sound, no Mara Ellin. Not anymore. A week had passed since the ranger found her, standing barefoot at the edge of the dock, tape in hand, eyes fogged like glass, left out in the cold. She had no ID, no memory, no name she could offer, just that blank cassette and a dazed, gentle smile. They checked the missing persons bulletins. No match. Her fingerprints weren't in any system. She had no scars, no bruises, nothing to hint at who she had been, except for a strange, spiral-shaped mark on her forearm, dark as ink, that doctors assumed was a birthmark. She was calm, polite, but empty. Inside her, something had been rewound. Now she lived in a small room at the edge of town under observation. The nurses called her Lake Jane. Sometimes she responded. Sometimes she simply stared out the window toward the lake. Always at 3:13 a.m. Always with a kind of expectant stillness. She never spoke. Until one night she did. It began with a humming, soft at first, too steady to be incidental, a child's lullaby. The nurse on duty leaned in, startled. "Do you remember something?" she asked gently. Mara didn't answer. She was holding the tape again, No one knew how it had gotten back into her possession. It had been confiscated, locked in a drawer at the facility, filed under unclaimed evidence. But there it was in her lap, unlabeled. The nurse hesitated. Then, thinking it might help, she placed a recorder on the table beside her. "If you remember anything," she said, "you can speak into this." Then she left the room. Morning came. Mara was gone, not escaped, just absent. Her bed undisturbed. Her clothes folded. The tape recorder remained, still running, still capturing. The facility's director pressed play the next day, expecting silence. But the tape contained sound, not static. Not voice, but a choir. A low harmony of humming, layered, endless, widening into something that pulsed with recognition. And then Mara's voice. Calm, measured, familiar. "If you're hearing this, then I'm not real anymore. I was made of echoes, guilt, unfinished sound. I pressed play when I should have closed the door." A pause. Then, "But if you found the tape, then maybe the song isn't over." Another pause. This time longer. Then a voice, not hers. A child's, soft and strange. "Let's rewind together." That night, 3 hikers reported hearing a bell tolling beneath the lake. Not from the shore, from below and near the edge of the dock. Nestled in the silt like something newly planted, lay a cassette tape half submerged. On its label, written in soft black marker, velvet, entry, "Mara when pressed to the ear, the tape didn't play music, it played breathing." Slow, content, and "Then I never had a sister, did I?" Then silence, and then, softer still, laughter. Not cruel, not broken, just remembered. The lake is quiet now. But not because it's empty, because it is full. Full of voices that will never stop listening. Full of sound that doesn't need a speaker. Full of names never written and songs that will always, always be waiting to be played again.